Welcome to my humble abode. I'm Yorkie the Talespinner, and this is Tales Over Coffee, a morning session where we begin the day together with a narrative tale and a coffee, in the hope of welcoming a blessed day. And this is Suzerain, the continuing tale of Anton Rain's probably failed presidency of Sordland. You know my view on narrative tales. There are no bad endings, there are only endings. As long as you follow what happens. As long as you play the game. Radical. Ishivelerson is right. The troubling and justified case of Ishivelerson is making its way from the lower court to the Ministry of Justice and by order to the Supreme Court. The systemic racism felt around the country seems to know no limits. Especially when it comes to the largest minority of our nation. The truth is that the situation is very bleak and the British people demand their long-awaited rights. The Constitution protects the individual rights on paper, but those who uphold and enforce the law pay little attention to such legalities. It gets even worse when justified legal cases like these are made and appealed to the Supreme Court. The general outcome is always depressingly unjust. Unfortunately, nobody expects otherwise in this case either. Fortunately, that's something I don't have a lot of control over. Operation Bear Trap begins. President Smolak has declared the start of Operation Bear Trap against a separatist militant group that plagues Northern Welland, the Bloody Freedom Front. Rumberg, Agnoli and Lesbia has condemned mobilisation order, citing war crimes committed during the previous assaults against the Bloodish people. While Sordland has not made any comments on the matter, Sordland failed to get a trade deal because we refused to back the matter. Watchdog Human Rights said they will be following the developments. That has cost us dearly. Report from Der Essen vs. Sordland case. Landmark court filing has been appealed to the Court of Appeals today for review by the Minister of Justice, the lawyer and Bloodish civil rights activist Ishivelerson, to the Dam municipality led by Felix Bronn, the infringement of the constitutional rights of equality before the law. The case questions the separate legal treatment of Bloodish in Dare, and by extension the whole of Belgium. Separate but equal is very seldom equal. Talks with Franz Richter on the upcoming vote. Office of the President of Sordland, Maroon Palace. The preparation for the new constitution were nearly complete. As soon as we were going to propose it to the Grand National Assembly, a huge step for our administration. But we desperately need more support, and that's why I had invited Franz Richter for a chat about the upcoming vote. He and his party held the key to our success. We met in the presidential office at the end of the day. He arrived in his signature navy blue suit and handed me a box of famous Arcasian chocolates before settling down on the couch. Good to have you here, Mr. Richter. Likewise, it's nice to finally have some time to talk. He took a folder from his briefcase and flipped it open. I could see the scribbles he'd made in the margins of my draft proposal. I have to say, I'm surprised by this proposal you prepared for the new constitution. I really do not understand your reasoning behind some of the changes. What parts don't you understand? I don't know where to begin. You are not reforming the presidential decree process. This was not at all what we talked about. This has become the opposite of democratic. Not to mention that you have ignored our demands to lower the non-democratic electoral threshold. How are you calling this a democratic package? These are all necessary to maintain stability. Necessary? What kind of excuse is that, Mr. President? And you are saying this while you're begging me for my party support. I still believe we can accomplish meaningful change together. Maybe we can. But I do not find the proposal by any means sufficient. I am still not sure what to make of it. And you're going to miss a chance for reforms just because they don't contain everything you want? You're putting all the reformists in a tough spot like this, Miss Suzerain. I'm sure it was tough to persuade your party to support this proposal, but this is what happens when you expect the USP to bring change. Don't expect me to sympathise with you. Not only have you minimised the potential for reforms, you're taking the spotlight away from PFJP members who campaigned for these reforms for years. You'd better have something else to offer. I'm sure you have something in mind. I value Sordland and democracy more than anything, Mr. President, and I also have to look after for myself and my party. Surely you understand. And if we're talking about democracy here, I first need to trust your agenda, and currently I do not. The first bill you signed effectively removed all other parties from funding. You are hijacking the elections from the very start. How can we trust you now? That bill also increased your funding, Mr. Richter. Oh, so I should be grateful for a small increase in funding, while your party gets all the rest. I think it's too late to fix anything now. I can't see any deals being made. It's a shame things won't work between us. We have the wealth. Let's use it. Nothing a check worth close to $1 million couldn't handle. Now you've got my attention. After some back and forth, we agreed on a sum and decided to transfer it. Friends shook my hand. I'm glad we were able to cooperate, Mr. President. I'll do my best to gather the support of my party. Likewise, Mr. Richter. I like this cooperative spirit. Was there anything else? I've had to bribe him already. I'm not going to kick things up by questioning him about other issues. No, Mr. Richter, thank you for coming. I'm looking forward to our cooperation. We shook hands. It's nice to have a president that can finally have a dialogue with. He laughed. I'll see you in history books. Have a nice evening now. He left the room. Sordland today, Rain meets Richter. Sordland today has received an exclusive update about President Rain's constitutional reform process. According to our insider sources, Rain met today with PFJP head French Richter in an attempt to show the party's votes in the Assembly. This meeting could be an indication that President is truly aiming for democratic reform, as opposed to paying lip service or using the opportunity to consolidate his own power. We will know more once the results of the meeting are announced. Richter backs Rain's reforms. At a party conference today, the PFJP came out in support of Anton Rain's constitutional changes. Later, Franz Richter announced that a proposal President Rain had submitted to them met their party's standards for democratic reform. It's time our parties stand together in order to make changes to our outdated constitution, said Richter, calling his party members to give support to the proposal. Despite a complete show of support from the PFJP members, the group's deputy chairwoman, Mrs. Sohail, protested Richter's call for bipartisanship and blamed the party leadership for handing Sordland to President Rain on a silver platter. She was seen leaving the meeting during Richter's speech in protest. It's unclear whether the draft will now go before the Assembly as Rain's original one, or if it has been changed with Richter's input. It's also unclear if Mrs. Sohail's protest will gather support within the party against the proposal. What is clear is that with the PFJP's votes, Rain's chance of successful passing of the reforms in the Assembly just got a lot higher. Yes, they did. That's a good thing. PFJP conference. At yesterday's party conference at PFJP, French Richter announced that he will be giving his full support to the constitutional changes proposed by the USP. He asked members of his party to follow him in this endeavour and set aside their differences for the greater good of the country. Let's hope it works. Award company contract. Several companies have put forward their bids for the new investment project. The SSC, Underhaul Construction and Taurus Holding have put forward their bids in hopes of winning the government contract for the new ambitious investment project. Which company should we pick to lead the project? There's only one we can really afford to, and that's Saudi State Corporation. The problem is they're already failing on the highway. Let's give it to Underhaul, which is going to hurt us big time. Our budget is screwed. Updates on the situation of education, University of Belgium. After a meeting with the rector and a brief tour of the University of Belgium, we gathered in a room with Ciara. The entire campus was visible from the windows. Students were reading books, studying, and having picnics under the trees. It reminded me of my own times at Halsall State University, at least the more carefree moments. Reminiscing about the past? Yes, it had its ups and downs, but it was still fun. And now we're growing old and bitter, she smiled. Well, let's not get sidetracked, said Ciara. I want to start this off by saying this. Stagnation doesn't get us anywhere. Simply maintaining my ministry's funds got us sitting duck with the dozens of issues left unsolvable. Although I insist the funds are still necessary to close the gaps in service, I can't say we've been entirely off track. I want to thank you for leading our education system in the right direction. Traditional teachings have long prevented proper progress. That is why we're here. She nodded and brought a stack of papers from her bag. Spinning her ballpoint pen, she went through the papers, organising some of them together. That's all there is for now. I have talked with Mrs. Suno to schedule some of the discuss curriculum. She's a very astute woman, your secretary. You may want to consider promoting her. We'll meet again very soon. Thank you for your efforts. Ciara put the papers back in the bag and left the meeting room. Oh, that was short and sweet. Alright, Halsall Post. A new mega project, Benfey International Airport. President Rain has just announced the plans for the Brand International Airport in Benfey. Brand new International Airport in Benfey. As per the announcement, Underhall Construction has been awarded the contract, and they will be taking over the daunting task that will be transforming the city. On completion, the mega project will provide much needed boost to the trade and infrastructure, not just Benfey, the entire Gruri region. Welland refugees fleeing the Sordish border, as well as President Victor Smolak continues his operations against bloodish insurgents in his country. A wave of people, Vezek, Sordish and Bloodish, have been attempting to flee the conflict across the border into Sordland. According to a report from the Alliance of Nations, the situation inside Welland is becoming increasingly complex, with many different groups and factions entering and leaving the country. The AN report states that international reporters are no longer being allowed inside Welland, and the information from the country has become incredibly difficult to obtain. It also explicitly warns the neighbouring countries of an upcoming refugee crisis. It remains to be seen how Rain's administration will deal with the influx. We may have to give up on the idea of tightening immigration. Radical. Vezek Bloods seek refuge in Sordland. Bloodthirsty dictator Victor Smolak is at it again with his endless operations against the so-called terrorists, as he keeps carpet bombing villages composed of innocent citizens. According to the latest reports, the number of Vezek Bloods displaced by the operation is at least 100,000. They have become refugees seeking help from nearby countries. Stuck in between Rumberg, Lesbia and Sordland, most of them are choosing our country. We must help these innocent people in the name of humanity, or no one else will. President Rain has done well with not even accepting a trade deal with a rogue country like Welland. We all know the saying, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Well, gee, thank you for the tepid support. Let's see, briefing on the current curriculum in schools. Ciara had scheduled a short meeting at the Ministry of Education to discuss the current curriculum taught in schools. The Ministry building was located in the government district, right next to the Ministry of Health. It was tall, narrow, and wedge-shaped, like a slightly opened book. Near the front gate, there were many statues of world-renowned scientists and thinkers. The largest, of course, was of Artvin Einstein, the greatest scientist of all time. Albert Einstein, are we playing on there a little bit, I think? Above the main entrance was the familiar inscription. In Stretton Sisser Angenika of Geregna, Int Ola Almergvalten, Int Ola Mexis. Education is a premise of progress. All societies, in all families. Inside the building, I was greeted by Ciara's assistants. They led me to a meeting room where she was waiting inside. She stood and gripped my hand. Good afternoon, Miss President, she said. Good afternoon, Ciara. I'll cut straight to the chase. The lack of government resources has halted our plans for education reform. There's one important change that can still be made. It involves evolution versus creationism. As it currently stands, schools across Sordland can decide whether to include evolution, creationism, or both in their curriculum. Rural schools often decide in favour of creationism only, which puts students at a disadvantage when it comes to entering university. The effect is especially noticeable among young women. My suggestion is to make the teaching of evolution mandatory, and preferably ban creationism altogether. If they wish to form their own faith, I am open to them doing so. If they wish to follow an established faith, I am open to them doing so. But trying to force it on them through teaching it in school, no. That's great to hear. It sounds like we already aligned to the matter. Lucien Galad knocked and entered. Excuse me, he said. Some urgent business kept me away. Welcome, Mr. Galad, said Sierra. Mr. President, he said. Ms. Walder. We were just discussing the curriculum. Sierra's made some excellent points. Very well, let's hear them, said Lucien. Continuing from my previous point, my conviction that we should require the mandatory teaching of evolution in Sordland's public schools and put creationism out completely. If we want children from rural areas to have the same opportunities as their urban counterparts, this is the way. Opening students' minds and reducing the role of religion in schools will also lead to more equality between young men and women. Don't bring your pet cause into this, Mrs. Welder, said Lucien. You failed your reforms, and now you want to remove belief from schools. Advancing women's rights is more than just a pet cause, said Sierra. Both of you gentlemen must know that. Also, we all know why the education reforms fails, don't we? Sierra looked at me. Turn it back on her. Your education budget didn't make the cuts. Nothing can be done about it. Action and consequences, I told you before, said Sierra. Going back to the topic, said Lucien. Although I myself believe in a revolution, we must be careful not to alienate our rural conservative voter base. We owe a lot to their support. Forcing their school districts to teach evolution could irreparably damage our standing with them. We're not going to hamper the minds of young people for a political vote, even if it sees me out of office. Every modern nation is reducing or removing creationism in their curriculum, yet we are supposed to allow students to promote fundamental and, yes, sexist ideas from thousands of years back. So is that what we're doing now, said Lucien, copying what other nations are doing instead of paving our own way? If it works, why not? Look at the analysis. Lucien, did Sordland invent the wheel? Did Sordland tame fire? We always copy others. Sometimes we also lead the way. But yes, copying others is not a failed project. It is clear that the superpowers are doing something right. Should we reinvent the wheel, Mr. Galad? Exactly. You speak as if we don't import any influences from other countries. That's not what I said, it's what you implied, Lucien. Their voices started to get louder and louder. I held up my hand for silence. Evolution is the way forward. Creation has no place in public school curriculum. Thank you. As I said, it's the only way to produce a new generation of thinkers. There are other methods of bringing Sordland forward, ones that don't sever our ties to the entire voter base. Yara looked me in the eye. Your decision. Don't forget, future generations of Swordish youth are counting on you. Lucien, you say there's other ways. You haven't brought a single thing except for an objection. Now creationism will be banned and only evolution will be taught. As your chief strategist, my job is to advise you on political landscape. I can guarantee these won't do as well. Sometimes there are more important things, Mr. Galad, like ideals. They turned and looked at each other. Lucien lifted his eyebrow and Sierra held his gaze for a couple of seconds. The meeting ended shortly afterward. All right. We have a lot of different news articles. 4 from the Whole Sword Post. Nationalise the Big Four now. As the debate about privatisation versus nationalisation intensifies in the capital, the Whole Sword Post firmly believes that President Rain should come down on the side of nationalisation for all of the so-called Big Four companies, including the currently fully private Heart of Sordland and Bergier Steel. Full nationalisation would prevent price gouging and prevent CEOs like Marcel Caronti from consolidating power, but even the government taking minority ownership of both companies would go a long way towards ensuring they act according to state interests. Overblown rights case appealed. Today, the politically motivated and controversial court case by Isabel Ersen has made its way to the Supreme Court to be reviewed. The Mayor of Dyer, Felix Braun, has dismissed the presence of systemic racism in the region of Belgium and accusations against law enforcement, citing that Bloodish people are being influenced by the Bloodish Freedom Front, who wishes to radicalise people for their dark aims. All eyes are now on Chief Justice Hawker and the Supreme Court to determine if the case has legal grounds or not. Many justices have already come forward to dispute the claim that the Constitution is not being upheld in the state of Sordland when it comes to the treatment of Bloodish people. Casero raises Bloodish question. Yesterday, in the Grand National Assembly, NFP leader Casero Kibner proposed law that would make Sordish the only language accepted in education. He's a nutcase. The law, I don't even want to read that. Dyer prepares for the day of dissension. The city of Dyer is busy preparing for the Day of Dissension, the annual celebration of the founding of Newry. Though religion plays a small role in Sordish daily life and in years past, the day still holds special importance for the Newrists, thousands of whom have already begun undertaking the pilgrimage to the tomb of St. Dast. The cathedral in which it is located, Dyer's Arch Sanctuary, is currently undergoing renovations, set to be completed in time for the festivities. In accordance with the presidential tradition, Anton Rain will make an appearance at the event. Like I say, I'm fully in favour of people maintaining their faith. Don't do it in school. Privatisation, the future of Sordland. Don't let the pro-government and elites fool you. Nationalisation of Sordland's big four companies would be a disaster for our country. Instead, we advocate for the privatisation of state-owned enterprises, Nidam Mining and Sordish State Corporation. Both companies have grown sluggish from lack of competition, when private interests taking a minority stake would lead to greater innovation and a brighter future. Evolution, get used to it or get out of the way. After a meeting with Maroon Palace, President Rain made the tough but wise decision to scrub creationism off Sordish schools' chalkboards and enforce the teaching of evolution instead. This should help silence critics of Sordland's education system, who have long argued that students here have yet to catch up with their counterparts in Acacia and United Contana. We look forward to seeing what other education reforms Rain administration has in store. Big win for science as Rain forces schools to evolve. Alright, we already know what you think of that. Read the report from Benford. Head Teachers Association of Sordland resigns. Fine. After the implementation of the new curriculum which banned creationism from schools, the head of the Teachers Association of Sordland, along with 8 out of 12 members, have resigned in protest. Following suit, teachers and principals from various schools in Benford have also left their jobs. Approximately 1,600 teacher positions are expected to be refilled in nearby regions. Very well. You don't wish to be employed? I guess you don't have to be employed. Report from Household Language Bill prepared by Casero. Casero Kibner is preparing a bill which aims to unify Sordish education by making Sordish the only language accepted in education institutes, excluding specific foreign language studies. Lobby the Assembly. The administration can start by lobbying efforts to sway votes. Chief Strategist Lucien Gallard has prepared a well-planned lobbying effort in the Parliament, which would specifically sway the on-the-fence MPs for the upcoming Constitution vote. The plan includes lavish parties, gifts, and even some political favours. Should we go ahead? I'm not going to completely sacrifice my family. I think we've secured enough. Economic report from Valgan. Valgan is suffering the effects of economic recession, with unemployment spiking and many small business shuttering. The larger agricultural concerns are expected to announce a wave of layoffs. And we move on. Chapter 3, Victim of Changes. I rather think that describes what I will be. Oh well. Let's catch up with the news, and that's where we'll leave it for today. World ignores the bloodish plight, barred from high-paying jobs, discouraged from attending university, spat on in the streets. Where is the outrage against Sordland's relentless oppression of the Bloods? For decades, bloodish swords have been treated as lesser beings, with the law still allowing rampant discrimination from businesses and education institutes. We call on the international community to raise awareness of this tragedy, so we can begin promoting equality among all Swedish citizens. Belgish man shot after burning Agnolian flag. The Helgeland protests started against the governor who was appointed by the Agnolian government are continuing without slowing down. After the supportive statements by Chancellor Emmerich Hegel, the Belgish protesters assembled in front of the government's office in Helgeport and waved Valslandian flags. One Valslandian protester was photographed as he climbed the flagpole of the governor's office and brought down the Agnolian flag. He was shot by the Agnolian authorities on the island when he attempted to burn the flag with gasoline. Protesters claim he was shot in the neck and killed immediately at the scene, while the Agnolian government has not released any statements on the subject. The incident sparked further unrest and protests turned into riots around the island. Many Belgish protesters are now calling for Valsland to save them. Chancellor Hegel was quick to respond to the incident, saying Valsland stands together with her people in Helgeland. No regime can murder its citizens because they protested. This conflict continues. Valsland holds the right to intervene to save her people. Agnolia, you're going to war and you've ruled us out of being allies with you, haven't you? Are you sure that was a smart move? BFF recruitment. It is reported that in the villages around Suzerain, a group of BFF missionaries are seeking to recruit militants to fight for the BFF. Governor Bron reported the gendarmerie force in the area and actively working towards eliminating the threat. Is it a threat to us or a threat to Welland, I wonder? Highway is still stalled. Some progress has been made on the international airport. Alright, and that is where we will end it for this time. I've been Yorkie the Talespinner, this has been Suzerain, and you've been a fine audience. May you have a blessed day.